So Super Rugby round 13, the Saturday games, all 6 of them are done. Some surprising results for one reason or another. Some interesting results in terms of the table. I didn't get to see all of them in their entirety, to be fair. Distractions in terms of new baby limited that, but I did get to see one of them in kind of start to finish without interruption. But more of that later. So we'll start with the first one in something of an upset. The Reds have gone down to the Sunwolves in Japan, a whopping 63 points to 28. So tries to Hadding Parker, 3 to Salmaki. So good hat trick for him. And a penalty try. There were a fair few penalty tries this week. For the Reds, Pangamosa, Lucas, Scott Young and Daugunu. So you can see not a massive difference in tries scored, but certainly a lot of penalties. Hayden Parker kicked a whole lot of points and scored a try, so good effort from him. Yeah, man, first win. It was always coming. There was always going to be that week where the Sunwolves just managed to click and put everything together and somebody else wasn't going to quite show up, and that was this game. You don't get 63 points by accident. And yeah, it was a very, very good performance from the Sunwolves. They did it to the Blues last year, and this year it's the Reds. The question for them will be whether they can kind of do this as a regular kind of thing. The main problem with the Sunwolves kind of prep, you think, has always been the fact that they came together pretty late. Like, they didn't have any time for a preseason game. It's at the end of the Japanese, domestic rugby season, so it's a new team of guys coming together. And you could argue that teams like the Lions, they only played one preseason game, but at least they're either, they've played rugby together before, or, they're in the Curry Cup team, or whatever. But these Sunwolves guys all come together late, and maybe it has taken them half the season just to get it to click. But yeah, from what I saw, really good offloading from the Sunwolves seemed to work. And their D, for a change, to give them credit, their D's been a lot better as the season's gone on, but their D definitely held. The Reds were kind of struggling. Like, one of their tries, I think they had to go how many phases? It was 20 plus phases just to get over the line. So yeah, they were really having to work for it, the Reds. The Reds still managed to have 60% position and territory, trying to bully things around with the forwards, but yeah, just kind of lacking that cutting edge. Sunwolves' tackling rate was 88% compared to the Reds, which is 74%. So 88 is pretty high. Also, the penalty count was 12 to 7. So Reds giving away almost double the penalties that the Sunwolves did. So that was definitely kind of punishing for them. Like I said previously, it was bound to happen eventually. Someone was going to get done over by the Sunwolves. This time it was the Reds. Good for the Sunwolves. They're no longer winless. I watched Brad Thorne's press conference afterwards, and I could hear a lot of shouting in the background. I'm assuming that was the Sunwolves guys celebrating. So yeah, good for them. Kind of bad for the Reds. I mean, nobody wants to be that team to be the first one to drop a result. And just in terms of their season, it's starting to look like a kind of a long road from here on out. So yeah, Reds have really got problems with consistency and seem to struggle on attack. Like, you need to see more of those kind of Daugunu tries, like we saw in this game, because if plan A is not working, there needs to be another option, I guess. And they do have some talented guys in the back line that can kind of spark things. So yeah, we'll see how things go for the Sunwolves. Next week they are at home, which is in Hong Kong next time, to the Stormers, whereas the Reds go away to the Hurricanes. So yeah, it could be another long week for the Reds. Next game, Crusaders beat the Waratahs 31 points to 29. Tries to Moody, Taylor, Eno, Tamanivalu, and another penalty try for the Waratahs. Clark, Nairovoro, Folau, and Rona. Biggest comeback in Super Rugby history, apparently, this one. The Waratahs, like, talk about a flying start, man. They had 29 points within about as many minutes. So they were pretty much scoring a point a minute against the Crusaders in Christchurch, which is just unheard of. But from that point where Rona got that try and it was 29-0, didn't score any points for the rest of the game, and that is kind of costly. There was a 10-minute period, about 10 minutes before half-time, where the Crusaders really came back into the game. They scored a few tries, and yeah, they didn't go into half-time facing pretty much a 30-point recovery to win. They only had I don't know, I think it was about half that anyway. So yeah, I mean, impressive stuff from the Crusaders, but they won't be happy that they let in such a margin to start with. The Crusaders' scrum was strong. That's what kind of got them the penalty try. Tars no points after the Rona try is disappointing. The penalty count 17-7, kind of costly for the Waratahs in that regard. So similar to the previous game, if you're going to let the Crusaders have that many shots at you, eventually they're gonna score. So you can't be doing that. The key stats of the game were pretty much all in favour of the Crusaders. So the Waratahs did really well to take those early chances, but then from then on out, it was just kind of holding on and just not able to kind of build anything. Foley did have a shot towards the end to try and kind of pip them, but nothing doing. Some of the Tars fans pretty filthy about Joe Moody still being on the field after an elbow to Kurtley Beale. It looks like there will be some punishment for him. He's only just come back to Super Rugby from injury, so he may be going to miss a wee while out with suspension by the looks of things. So that might have changed the course of the game. But honestly, if you're 29 points up after 30 minutes and you can't win it, then blaming the ref seems like a bit of an excuse. I know you want the refs to get the calls right, and it sucks when they get it wrong. But come on, man, 29 point start. You've got to finish it from there. So not able to get it done. Crusaders have got the Blues away next week. So although the Crusaders machine keeps trucking along, we've seen against the Brumbies that they didn't play their best. And probably in this game, definitely not their best. They were predicted to win by 20 instead of 2. But I mean, credit to them for coming back, as I said. But yeah, the Crusaders, if they are going to play in a final against a team like the Hurricanes, they're going to need to be spot on, not letting in big leads like this. Waratahs are at home to the Highlanders, so yet have another chance to break that Aussie-New Zealand drought. They've come close for 2 weeks in a row. We'll see if third time is the charm. Next one is the Highlanders beating the Lions. That was 39 points to 27. So tries to Sopawanga, Coltman, Whitelock, Naholo, and Walden. The Lions tries to Forster. Kutsia got 2, and Skuman. So yeah, it's the end of a pretty poor tour for the Lions. They have gone 1 from 4 on their tour. After that game against the Waratahs to start with, it looked like they might go 3 out of 4, perhaps even challenge for 4, but that one was the only one. So the game itself was pretty good. A bit of back and forth action. Again, I didn't see all of it. But the lead never changed. Once the Highlanders were out in front, they never went behind to the Lions. The Lions would always pull them back every time the Highlanders threatened to pull away. But still, they never managed to get in front. The Highlanders are pretty slick. Their midfield of Thompson and Walden is pretty class. Like there was, a pretty big name in Malachi Fekitoa that left last year, but honestly, this midfield is looking really good. Even if it's not kind of like big names like Fekitoa or Sonny Bill Williams or someone like that, they are still really getting the job done. These two guys, the Lions, man, just guilty of a few things that seem to be creeping into their game. Of soft tackles, loose passes, bad handling. It's it's not kind of characteristic of the team that we've grown to be used to watching over the last couple of years. Possession was 50-50, which is pretty impressive for the Highlanders. That's not usually the game they play, but Aaron Major has talked about kind of shifting the focus of the tactics. So this is one of the first times I've seen them kind of go into that territory. It's usually 30 or 40%. So yeah, we'll see if this kind of continues to change. In terms of the result, the Highlanders aren't going to be thrilled with their performance because they still weren't the complete package. But I mean, especially after last week's kind of disappointment, they'll be pretty chuffed to get a win for sure. For the Lions, like I said, a really poor tour overall. 1 out of 4, at least 2 out of 4 would have been a pass. 1 out of 4 is a bit of a fail. That Reds game they'll look back on is pretty disappointing, having only tried to come back towards the end. The game against the Hurricanes, you can perhaps say, that was always going to be hard, but this one they would have liked to probably challenge a bit more. Schoolman can't keep out of the tries, which is at least one bright spot. Highlanders, they are away next week against the Waratahs. The Lions go back home to South Africa to play the Brumbies, so I guess that's a good chance for them to kind of get the season back on track. Next, Brumbies go down at home, 24 points to 27 to the Rebels. So Brumbies tries to Cusack, Sione and Valtini. The Rebels 2 to English, 1 to Maddox and 1 to Tupou. So a few of the kind of the young guns of Aussie rugby getting on the board here, which is good to see. Guys like Maddox, Tupou, Valtini, even Sione. These are guys who we want to see kind of putting their hands up going forward for the Wallabies. First thing I saw with this game, again, and didn't see the whole thing, the attendance seemed pretty poor. I suppose the Brumbies have been poor this season, so wasn't a real big draw for them, but like a crowd of about 5,000 something, that's that's not ideal by anyone's stretch of the imagination. In terms of the game itself, it's another game where there was a pretty big comeback. So the Rebels were down 21-5 at one point and managed to work themselves back into the game and pull off a 3-point win. Brumbies, somewhat to the Tars, had a pretty good start. Were taking the chances that they had, and impressively, I guess, they made much better use of their man advantage than they did when they played the Crusaders. The Crusaders, they had a 2-man advantage and they just looked hopeless. This week they had 1-man advantage and managed to score 14 points during that yellow card period. So if nothing else, that's kind of one bright spot for the Brumbies. The Rebels still, though, had kind of better stats overall. If you look at the game, territory possession, run meters, all that kind of stuff, they kind of bossed the game around, especially the second half. The second half was pretty much all the Rebels. Brumbies season's pretty much over. There's nothing much they can really do from here. They're pretty far behind in the Aussie Conference. They're only ahead of the Sunwolves, and in terms of the table itself, they're 14th out of 15. So, yeah, it's not going great in Dan McKellar's first season in charge. I think they might as well give some of the young guys a run. Some of the experienced guys aren't performing. Like Spate had a decent start to the season, but he's been a bit ordinary the last few weeks. Carter is the one who was guilty of giving away that penalty. Not that I say you drop him because he's kind of co-captain, but still, now's the time to build for next year, so you might as well give some of the young guys a chance, see if they've got what it takes, or at least give them some experience. For the Rebels, they are now only 1 point behind the Waratahs, I guess. Speaking of the Waratahs, that bonus point they got, I think if you'd offered them a bonus point before the start of the game, they probably would have taken it. So that bonus point kind of now looks a bit more important with the Rebels getting that, being 1 point behind on the Aussie Conference table. Still, they're not at a great level, though. The Brumbies have been poor, and they only managed to pip them with a penalty in the last kind of few minutes. So, yeah, not great if you're a Rebels fan, but, a win's a win. Take it. Brumbies go away to the Lions. Like I said, it'll be tough, and the Rebels are on the bye. So, kind of time to, I guess, refocus and readjust how things are. If you like funny forwards, check out Parling's attempted grubber kick in that game. It was amusing. The next game, Stormers have gone down. Their home record of being undefeated at Newlands is now gone. The Chiefs have beaten them 15-9. This is the one game that I managed to see without having to stop and do anything else, and it was pretty ordinary. I mean, these guys have had some pretty good games in the last couple of seasons, and I was looking forward to it a lot. And to say it as a letdown is putting it mildly. I haven't got a lot to say, to be honest. The Stormers didn't get a try. The Chiefs got 2, 1 to Leonard Brown and 1 penalty try because their scrum was kind of in the ascendancy. Yeah, it was 3 points to 5 at half time. So it wasn't, I guess, a real try-fest. It was pretty error-ridden. I guess there was one moment where Dylan Lades almost got yellow carded because the ref had thought he'd kind of deliberately knocked it, but the linesman corrected him, so that was funny to see the ref put his hand in his pocket and then be like, oh, no, it's all right. Stormers had to try and win it at the death, and they just went through a few phases, weren't really going anywhere, so kind of disappointing that, after some good developments in their game, they didn't look like doing it at all. You didn't think they were going to go length of the field and put one back on the Chiefs. So, yeah, disappointing. The Chiefs had more possession and territory, but not a whole heck of a lot. I guess the defence of those teams were both pretty decent. The Chiefs managed to keep a clean sheet in terms of tries. Stormers led in 2 against the Chiefs, which most teams would be fairly satisfied with. But, yeah, not a great ad for Super Rugby, but in terms of the table, it makes the Stormers' life very difficult from here on out, although that South African conference is really tight. And for the Chiefs, it's a needed win after a home loss last week, so I guess that kind of keeps them alive in the New Zealand conference, although the Hurricanes and Crusaders are still looking to cut above. Stormers travel to Hong Kong to play Sunwolves, and Chiefs are away to the Sharks next week. Final game, Bulls-Sharks. It was a bit of an improvement after watching that Stormers-Chiefs one. It means the Bulls have done a double over the Sharks this year, one home and away. That's pretty cool for them. Sharks unable to kind of get revenge for that loss in Durban a while back. It's a solid victory. And it was, like I said, definitely a better watch than the previous game. Some pretty slick moves, like guys like Creel, Gelant, Bosch, even though he got yellow carded, were all showing some pretty silky skills in this game. I should say tries to Gelant, Creel, Smit, Kutzer, and De Jager for the Bulls, Bosch, Vermeulen, and Jean-Luc Duplessis for the Sharks. If you're Rassie Erasmus right now, you're looking at guys like Creel and Gelant, and you must be pretty happy because some of the stuff they were doing was really impressive. It's kind of what I was hoping to see from the Stormers, but it just wasn't really there. The yellow cards, Sneeman's or Bosch's one was just dumb, putting out a trip. I guess it was an instinctive trip. He stuck out his leg to trip over. Was it Gelant, I think? Sneeman's one, just like a shoulder charge on the scrum half. Tackling a guy in the air. These are all stupid. So if you're Rassie Erasmus, you've also got a bit of concern that some of you guys are having kind of mental moments where they, their mental game isn't there. They're losing a bit of focus. So, but apart from that, I think he's got plenty to work with. In terms of the South African Conference, there's only 8 points between the top and the bottom teams. So it is tight, very tight, and I think the next few weeks are going to be pretty crucial to see who's going to put their hand up. Jaguars have been in good form, so we'll see if they can come back from the bye keeping that. For the Bulls, it keeps them alive after a couple of consecutive losses. They were at the bottom of the South African Conference. I think they're now up to 3rd. The Sharks still unable to kind of put results together. They're a frustrating team in that they will blow you away one week and then just not really do the business next week. So, I mean, this game wasn't one where they played that bad, but the Bulls were improved from their game last week as well. So, if any of these teams can just put on a run, I think they'll go well, but it seems to be difficult at the moment. South African Conference, of all the conferences, does seem to be kind of the most even between the top and the bottom team. Like you can see the bottom team in South Africa, which is currently the Stormers, beating any of the other teams in that conference kind of at any time. But but you couldn't really see the Blues going in to beat the Hurricanes or the Sunwolves to beat the Waratahs or Rebels. Probably not. So yeah, it's hard for the South African teams to kind of build some momentum with the parity in that conference. So yeah, it was a pretty good week. Interesting results. Almost an upset with the Waratahs game. That would have been kind of the result of the round, but you've got to probably give it to the Sunwolves for getting their first win. Some of the other teams just unable to do it, especially the Lions. Brumbies, which was pretty much a finals game for them, not able to do the business, so kind of disappointing. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the games, and yeah, I'll have a look at some power rankings, which will actually be a fair bit more interesting after these results, probably tomorrow. Alright guys, I'll talk to you again soon.